What up, everybody? This is your boy Dedrian Colon from House of Wrestling. This is my review for the April 16th pay-per-view. New Japan Pro Wrestling's Windy City Riot. I had the privilege of actually attending this pay-per-view, so this review is going to be a little bit different. Forgive me if I don't have the usual details for the event. One thing about this venue, which was at the Odeum, I don't know if it's going to get torn down or anything. I think that's what was being reported. I think it's one of the last events there. But yeah, this venue, there was hardly any Wi-Fi. So for those of you who follow House of Wrestling on the social media platforms and follow myself on social media platforms, yeah, it was hard to upload anything. So thankfully, I had another device where I was able to record video and capture some pictures. So that will be up in the next 24 hours or so. But hey, this video, like, share, comment, subscribe, follow House of Wrestling on all social media platforms. Follow me, Dedrian180 on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Yeah, this was a really cool pay-per-view. It was my first New Japan Pro Wrestling event that I attended. I know it's the first New Japan Pro Wrestling event standalone in Chicago. It also was my first time attending the Odeum in Villa Park outside of Chicago. I know the Odeum hosted a lot of events going back to more wrestling events, going back to ECW back in the day, the original ECW, not WECW. But man, this was a fun pay-per-view. One thing I will talk about the cons first, very little. One issue that was there was that there was literally only 2 concession stands. And then there was a concession stand for drinks. And those lines were like long as hell for pretty much majority of the event. So if you walked in and you wanted something to drink or eat, you were going to wait for a while. And it was insane. But that's to be expected because New Japan Pro Wrestling is a very popular promotion. Granted, it's working with AEW. It is the biggest promotion outside of the WWE internationally. But man, it was fun. Myself and shout out to Josh Lopez of the Hoots podcast. He accompanied me to this pay-per-view. When we got there, there was a long line, and I think I posted it. You can check it out on the House of Wrestling Twitter account. I did post a video of us arriving and just a line that was just super long. And as we were getting closer to get checked in, because we had our tickets and everything, and they're scanning it, the line just got even longer. I believe there had to be roughly about maybe 15,000 people. 17,000 people. When I first got in there, not a lot of seats were filled, but once the event started rolling, it was pretty packed, and it was very loud, a lot of spots, very good wrestling. I do have to say this, and I've been to WWF events in the 80s. I've been to WCW Monday Nitros and one WCW house show in the 90s. I've been to TNA, Impact Wrestling, when they were filming in Universal Studios. I've been to AEW. I've been to WWE Raw, SmackDown. Was it the Payback pay-per-view in 2013? Survivor Series in 2019. But I do have to say, in every time that I've gone to a wrestling event, New Japan Pro Wrestling has the most beautiful ring that you can watch a wrestling match in live. That is a beautiful ring. Oh my God, that ring is so freaking beautiful. It's one thing when you watch it on TV, when you watch New Japan Pro Wrestling on TV, it's like, oh wow, okay, it's different. It's different from WWE. It's different from any of the American promotions. It's different from Lucha Libre in Mexico. Okay, it's different. But man, to watch a match, and let me phrase that, matches in a New Japan Pro Wrestling ring, man, that is a work of art. That is a beautiful ring. And I don't want to take away from the matches, but man, that is a very beautiful ring that New Japan Pro Wrestling has. If you get a chance to go to any of the New Japan Pro Wrestling events in the States through the New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong, I recommend you go there because, man, that ring is so beautiful. And what I like about the ring is that it's easy on the eye. Like, it draws you in because, man, the way it's designed and everything, that is a beautiful ring. But man, this show, just going through the list of matches, man, I man, honestly, there was not one bad match on this card. And I think this is one of the first pay-per-view slash TV wrestling shows that I've attended where, like, top to bottom, the card wasn't that bad. It was solid. Where the wrestlers were placed on the card, they did their job. They did their thing. Yeah, I'm still can't fathom, like, that New Japan Pro Wrestling ring is beautiful, man. Like, it's one thing to see it on TV, but to see it in person, man, that is a beautiful ring. The design, the layout, the color scheme, and it's not too bright. It's just, oh man, that is a beautiful ring. But man, it started off. Give me 1 second, guys. Yeah, so it started off. I got the match card here, and I took some notes and everything. Yeah, this was one of those events. Like, if you were, like in my case, reviewing it and going there closer, you take notes. But man, just to experience it live and just the match flow and just it's hard to pinpoint like little key things in every match. Like, oh, this, like, there's like, now thinking about, there's probably a few that I'm probably gonna touch on. I'm probably gonna miss. Forgive me, guys. But man, watch New Japan Pro Wrestling live. It is an experience. I went to the Rampage where CM Punk debuted. That was an experience. But man, New Japan Pro Wrestling is a different experience from AEW and Impact and WWE. Like, it is a unique experience that's so damn fun. And that crowd is hot, man. It is fun to watch that. But man, it started off with the La Dojo and the Factory. You had QT Marshall, Nick Camarado, and Aaron Solo with Clark Connors. Oh, man, I'm trying to remember the other guys in the La Dojo. But man, the guys from La Dojo, that was a fun match. That was a fun match. Kudos to the Factory. Normally we see them on AEW Dark or Elevation, and we've gotten accustomed to their match style, especially when they were feuding with Cody Rhodes when he was in AEW. But this is a total, like, the way this match was laid out and the way the crowd received it. It did not feel like this was an AEW match. This felt like it was a New Japan Pro Wrestling match. Highlight of the match, like, the guy that stood out in this match was QT Marshall. For me, QT Marshall. The guys from La Dojo, they were spectacular, but QT Marshall is such a underrated heel where he knows how to get the job done as far as putting over the faces. And he actually did a really good job because the Factory won. That match starting off the night, it was really cool. People, man, that crowd did not like QT Marshall. They fucking hated that guy. They were booing him, and you could tell that he was relishing it because he was giving it right back to the fans. And it's like, oh man, this guy, you just want to beat him. From there, we had Team Filthy with Danny Limelight. I know Kratos from NWA and a few other guys that I'm not too familiar with from New Japan. Then you had Fred Ross, Josh Alexander, Narita, and Coughlin. This was a solid match. Chris Dickerson, man, that dude is a freaking beast. Danny Limelight, man, you could tell the work that he's been doing in MLW and just the freedom he has is just letting out his character and his personality. It came out in this match, and he was hot dogging, but man, he was a good seller. He was selling good. I enjoyed it. Um, the one man, Cradle, is this Kratos? Yeah, I believe this is Kratos from NW. Yeah, it's Kratos. Um, Man, that dude is freaking huge in person, man. I did not realize how big he is. I've seen him in NWA, and of course in the NWA ring, he's like, oh, okay, he's a big guy. Yeah, all right. And of course, in NWA, you got a few other big guys that are around his height. It's like, oh, okay. But man, in person, that dude's freaking huge. And man, just these spots in the matches, man. Fred Rosser, like, he looks ripped, man. But this was a fun match. Um, they didn't do too much like we've seen in other matches like this, um, in 10-man tag matches. But man, this was a fun match. You could see again, this is in this review. You're gonna hear this a lot, but it's one thing to see like Fred Ross and Josh Alexander on TV, but in person, man, that is a treasure to see those guys wrestle, man, because it is a work of art, and you could tell the transformation that Fred Rosser has made ever since he left WWE, and of course, he was with Titus O'Neil and the was it Primetime Players. But man, you could see the growth. Man, this was a really good match. Yeah, it. I'm trying to remember what else it was. Forgive me, guys. I have the videos and everything, but it was an experience with this match. Just adding on to it, because mind you, most 10-man tags in New Japan is it's already crazy wild. You're gonna see guys do moves that you're like, oh crap, counters, reversals, that whole nine. But in the end, Fred Rosser's team won. I like that because they have the momentum. Josh Alexander from Impact Wrestling, he's getting his thing with the world title. So it was good to see the guys that are actually getting momentum. And mind you, this isn't to take away from Danny Limelight and what he's doing with the Von Erichs and MLW. But on the Fred Rosser side, it makes sense to have them, for them to win, because it's just the momentum and stuff like that. But that was a fun match. Afterwards, Tom Lawler and Team Filthy, they beat down Fred Rosser. And it was like, ooh, okay, this is all right. Second match, all right, you're getting the crowd into it. Lo and behold, Yuji Nagata comes in for the save. And this sets up the next match, which is Yuji Nagata and Tom Lawler. And man, I don't know what's with New Japan Pro Wrestling, but they love chopping. And this was one of the many chop fest that we've seen tonight. And chop fest forearm, they laid it in. There was moments in the match where there was a lot of mat wrestling, reversals. Tom Lawler did his thing. Yuji Nagata, like, it's crazy to think, like, when he came out in the ring and they were just wrestling, I'm like, yo, this dude was on Nitro back in the day, like 96, 97. Like, it's crazy to think, fast forward all these years later in 2022, Yuji Nagata is like, yo, and he was moving well. And that's something that I did notice about this pay-per-view, watching it live, that, man, these guys can move. Like, it's one thing to watch them on TV, but like to see them in person, like, these guys move quicker in person than they do on TV. But in the end, Tom Lawler wins. He's still the New Japan, I believe, New Japan Strong champion. That was a great match. That was a great match. It wasn't. That's one thing about these matches that I can say now in hindsight, that they didn't take away the match that was coming after it. It was like they knew what they wanted to tell, and they told it. And it was like, ooh, okay, this is good. And then the next match, like, ooh, this is good. And each match stood out, and each match had its own identity. It wasn't trying to overshadow the next match. It was just this whole card was very fluid watching it live. Then the next match, which was the United Empire and the Bullet Club. And of course, the United Empire, you have TJP, you got, these are some of the notable names, and you have Jeff Cobb, and then, of course, in the Bullet Club, I was going to say NWO, but it's kind of true. Chris Bay, El Phantasmo, Hikuleo, Carl Anderson, Doc Gallows, and Scott Norton. Yes, Scott Norton, formerly of the NWO. Excuse me, guys. With this match, every person in this match showcased their strength. Jeff Cobb showcased his strength. TJP, he showcased his, if you watched him in MLW and of course Impact Wrestling, he showcased his speed and agility. Chris Bay and El Phantasmo showcased their speed, agility, and their teamwork. Like, they did some spots in this match that was like, yo, these two need to be a tag team and go after some gold, because they have some fluidity. Then of course Hikuleo, like the big giant, like, man, he did his thing in this match. Carl Anderson, Doc Gallows, they pretty much, now that I think about, were they hardly in the match? Like, they were in the match, but it felt like they were on the outside most of the match. Scott Norton, I mean, that was more of a nostalgia thing. You could tell this is not the Scott Norton that we remember in WCW, but for what he did, it was cool. The crowd loved it. The crowd ate it up. This isn't the Scott Norton that we remember in WCW, but man, this is Scott Norton. He did his thing. It was entertaining. It was cool to see him back in person. I know I remember seeing him on Nitro. Man, it was really cool to see him, and it was cool for the Bullet Club members to, give him respect. And Carl Anderson, the newest member to the Bullet Club, Scott Norton, which is a common theme with the Bullet Club, that they honorably, like, bring in, like, former NWO members as Bullet Club. So it's almost like Bullet Club is the little brother of the NWO. So it's like, hey, we're going to pay homage to the guys that came before us. And it was really cool. But yeah, this match, the guys that really stood out was Jeff Cobb and El Phantasmo, TJP, and Hikuleo. Those are the guys that stood out in this match. They did some stuff in this match. I like the spot where, like, every member of the Bullet Club did a back rake, and it was a different variation. And just, they were very creative in doing the back rake, where Chris Bay and El Phantasmo did one that, where it showcased their agility, and then they did the back rake. Hikuleo did one that showcased him being a giant and how he did the back rake. Carl Anderson, Doc Gallows, same thing, and then Scott Norton did it. That was a really cool spot. If you haven't seen this, go check it out. It was a really cool spot. But in the end, the United Empire won, which, it's very interesting because lately the Bullet Club, outside of Jay White, have been losing. So there's something I think we need to keep an eye on. I don't know where it's going to go, but keep an eye on. Then from there, we had the Chicago Street Fight, which was my favorite match of the night. And this is not to take away from Moxley and Ospreay, which was a dope match. But this Chicago Street Fight was fun. They fought in the crowd. My section, I actually seen them. It was... Who was it? Yeah, Brody King. And... Was it? No, it wasn't Jota. So yeah, it was Finn Juice and Brody King versus Tomoko. Forgive me if I pronounce it. And Jonah. They fought over the ring. It was cool. I was able to see Brody King. He fought all the way up into my section. I'm like, yo, that's Brody King. He fought down. Then they went around Juice Robinson and the other partners for Jonah. They fought by the concession stand, and he threw stuff on him. And then Brody King and one of the other guys, he was chopping him in a chair. Like, it was like if you were sitting on the side that the hard cam was shooting, like everything was in front of you. Mind you, this venue was very intimate, so like it may look far, but no, it was like really close, and I was like, yo, they're right there. Like, yo, that's fun. But yeah, they used everything in the book. They brought in the door, they brought in the table. There was a spot where Jonah did a splash through a ladder that was held up from the ring apron to the guardrail. Did a splash on Brody King, which is insane. Of course, there was a spot where they put, oh my God, who was it? It wasn't Brody King. I believe it was Jonah. Jonah was on the turnbuckle. They put a chair in between his legs, and Brody King like swung the chair like a bat into the chair that went right into Jonah's balls, basically. You had that spot. You had, what was the other spot? Like, there were so many crazy spots. And by crazy, I don't mean like really hard on the body, like crazy, like, yo, I didn't even think about that. Like, that's pretty cool. They did do a spot with the ladder against the turnbuckle, and Juice Robinson, he missed. Then you had, oh my God, what was it? The door spot where Juice, he speared one of the teammates for Jonah, and like that sound, like on TV, it has a sound like just, it's like, ooh, man, it sounds pretty cool. But like in person, like if you've seen those spots like with the doors breaking in person, it sounds even louder, and it's like, ooh, that hurts. And in the end, Brody King and FinJuice, they win the match. This appears to be Juice Robinson's last match. I know there's been word that he's eventually leaving New Japan, and the way it came across, it was him and David Finlay. He gave the crowd, the crowd gave him a standing ovation. He waved to the crowd. Him and David Finlay hugged, and then they went to the back. So it did appear like this probably is the last match of FinJuice in New Japan Pro Wrestling. I don't know. We'll see. Then we get Jay White and his mystery opponent. And you had Jay White versus Shoto Umana. And hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Forgive me. But yeah, that match, it was pretty, it was a really good match, but most of the match, Jay White was dominating. Of course, he was talking shit and everything. He was talking. His entrance was really cool. But yeah, Jay White, he ends up winning. He grabs the mic and he teases that he's going to say something, and then he goes around. He's moving around like this, going around the ring. He's going like this, and then he goes and drops the mic, and then walks out, which was pretty cool. And then after that, you had the match that I want to say the match of forearms to the face, because there was a lot of them. I was surprised because normally when you have a match with Minoru Suzuki, there's a lot of chops, and with Tomohiro Ishii, there are chops. This one did not have a lot of chops. They had a lot of forearms, and you heard it, man. And that match was Tomohiro Ishii versus Minoru Suzuki. Man, I don't know how these guys can take those forearms to the head, especially here and here. They laid into each other. There was a lot of forearms to the head. There was a lot of headbutts. um, clotheslines, shoulder blocks. Like, this was a physical match. And this wasn't a physical match, they're flying around. Like, when you had, like, this was like a physical match from like the late 80s of like almost like NWA, like Ron Garvin, and man, who did he feud with? Buzz Sawyer. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Perfect example. This was like an American version of Ron Garvin versus Buzz Sawyer. Like, just that physicality. Like, damn. And I know those are some old school names. I recommend you guys check them out. Check out Ron Garvin, from NWA Ron Garvin, if you go on YouTube, and check out Buzz Sawyer. Like, dude was a beast back in the day. But man, this was a really physical match. I do gotta say that. Do tell you. Oh my god, it's been a long night, man. But man, you have to see Tomohiro Ishii and Minoru Suzuki live. It's one thing to see him on TV, and of course, I've probably said that numerous times doing this review. But it's one thing to see them on TV, but to see them live is a special treat, man. That is an experience from the entrances and just their ring psychology and just the story they're telling in the ring. It's beautiful. It's nothing you're going to see in another promotion. That's why I recommend it. When you watch Tomohiro Ishii and Minoru Suzuki live, you don't see that in any other promotion. It can be often imitated, but it will be never duplicated, because what they bring to the ring and the way they wrestle and the physicality and the brutality and the intensity and the grit and the no nonsense, and then the just like, you're gonna have to kill me to pin me, and just that whole thing. Like, it's an experience. No one else can do what they do, and no other promotion has guys like that can have a match that they had at Windy City Riot like them. No one does. No promotion does. I recommend you guys watch that match. It was a fun match. It wasn't. That's the surprising thing about this pay-per-view. Usually, certain New Japan matches are pretty lengthy. This pay-per-view, not a lot of, like, there were decent time, but it wasn't too long. And in the end, Tomohiro Ishii wins. He's celebrating, and then out of nowhere, Eddie Kingston comes out. His music hits. This crowd went like, yo, like they were cheering him. They were just excited to see him. And he's basically promoting and teasing a match with Tomohiro Ishii at, I believe it's Washington, either Seattle, Washington, or Washington. Forgive me, guys. Their next event, their next pay-per-view. So Eddie Kingston versus Tomohiro Ishii. I'm all for it. That is going to be a fun match to watch. After that, you have the main event, Jon Moxley, Will Ospreay. I don't know what to say. And I mean that in a good way. This match, eventually in the match, they ended up being bloodied. The way the match started, so Will Ospreay, he was in the ring, then he left the apron, and it was like he anticipated where Jon Moxley was going to enter the ring. And mind you, Jon Moxley, he came through the crowd, and they started fighting right away in the crowd. And they fought over there. Then there was a spot after a few moves and everything where was it Ospreay had Moxley on the English commentary table, and he dove from the top turnbuckle to the tail. He did it looked like a Macho Man elbow drop, and he put him through the floor. There was a spot where Will Ospreay, of course, his finishing move is the running Spanish fly. There was at least 2 times where he attempted it, and Moxley countered perfectly, man, like perfectly. Then, of course, as the match went on and everything, like there was a few times that John Moxley got some nasty clotheslines into Will Ospreay, where you heard it felt like somebody smacked him, and he got him. And then, of course, Will Ospreay, he showed some of his athleticism it's a sight to see. Will Ospreay live is a sight to see, man. That is a treasure, man. You got to see him live. In the end, John Moxley wins. Mind you, the United Empire was around ringside, and he still managed to win. Post-match, he gave us, a speech that Will Ospreay got respect. He's a fighter. I thought he was a punk-ass kid, but he stood his ground, and hey, I'll give him respect and everything. But man, overall, if you have a chance or you're contemplating a chance to go, or you're thinking like, man, should I go to a New Japan event? Should I go to a New Japan event? This was my first New Japan event. It won't be the last. Like I said before, that ring is a beautiful thing to see live. That is the most beautiful ring in professional wrestling. The match quality was top notch. Only issue I had about this, besides the concession stands and everything, I wish they would have had an intermission. They did not have an intermission, and it would have been cool for them to have an intermission, maybe a 7-10 minute intermission, or maybe a 10-minute intermission. That would have been cool. But other than that, man, this was a top notch pay-per-view. The Chicago Street Fight was amazing. Eddie Kingston coming out, which was a surprise. Yeah, go see a New Japan Pro Wrestling event. That's the takeaway from this event. If you are contemplating, man, should I go to a New Japan event or shouldn't I? My advice, go to that event, because you're not going to see the type of wrestlers that they put on these cards. You are not going to see them in any other promotion. Granted, you have the Forbidden Door, one, but as a card whole, you're not going to see any of these wrestlers like that. And the way they wrestle when you're watching it live, man, it is a sight to see, is an experience to have. And me describing it doesn't know justice. The crowd was into it. They knew who these guys were. They even knew the words to Minoru Suzuki's song, which I, to this day, I'm still trying to figure out. But man, go to a New Japan Pro Wrestling pay-per-view event, whatever. You got to go. It is that wrestling. It's not on any other TV. It's not on any other promotion. AEW has their own way of doing, their own way. WWE has their own way. Impact has their own way. New Japan is a totally different beast. Like they are on something different and good and great. So I recommend you go see it. But yeah, that's my review for the April 16th pay-per-view New Japan Pro Wrestling Riot. Man, if you haven't seen or you're thinking about, I recommend order this on Fightful. Watch it. If you want to see good, solid professional wrestling, this is it. So yeah, that is my review. Like, share, comment, subscribe, follow House of Wrestling on all social media platforms. Follow me, Dedrian180, on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. And like I always say, stop fighting over wrestling. There's so much wrestling. Enjoy it. And with that,